This is the difference between knowing about working at a small company versus a large company. If you work at a company where there is stacks of leadership and people have been there for 10, 20 years, and you see the upward mobility of that as people just getting promoted upward, you have to use common sense. Like, that might be the type of industry and the type of company that you're working for. It doesn't mean that you can't jump, but it means it's going to be a lot harder than if you were in a smaller company.
I'm interested in pursuing an executive leadership position, and it seems like seniority is the only way to climb to the top. How am I supposed to pursue a leadership position if it feels like there's no way I'll be able to pass over these people who have been working a lot longer than me?
It's tough. So this is the difference between knowing about working at a small company versus a large company. When you work at a large company and how you define a large company, everyone's going to define it a little differently. I would say that if you're working for a company under 100, 200 people, it's a smaller company. Startup would be between 0 and 20 people, maybe. A medium-sized company, maybe in that 200, 250 to 500. And then you have the large companies up to 1,000 employees. And then you have corporations and enterprises that are on the stock exchange that have thousands of employees all over. So depending on what we're talking about here, I'll just take maybe just a large company that has 1,000 employees. If you work at a company where there is stacks of leadership and people have been there for 10, 20 years, and you see the upward mobility of that as people just getting promoted upward, you have to use common sense. Like, that might be the type of industry and the type of company that you're working for. It doesn't mean that you can't jump, but it means it's going to be a lot harder than if you were in a smaller company.
It's going to take 30 years.
It could. I personally don't like those type of systems. For that reason, the politics and the corporate ladder, there's what you feel like is stability, but I don't know how much stability there is these days. If you look at who does layoffs, it's usually those big companies, and you don't know because they're just going to pull the rug right out from underneath you. So you got pros and cons for working at big and small companies, and everyone needs to kind of think for themselves, where am I a better fit to determine, where they want to work. But one thing you can do in those types of environments, if you look up and there's no room for me, you can try to go sideways. Maybe go to a different department where there might be different types of growth opportunities, or a new department that maybe they're growing and you can be part of. So you want to make sure you explore all the other opportunities that are available within the company in lateral moves. So sometimes you get so stuck looking up, making more money, that you miss opportunities to go lateral and see there's a lot more opportunities on that side than there is on this side. So that's one thing I would do if I was in a really big company. And I would say if you're in a smaller company or a mid-sized company, I wouldn't worry about that so much. Now, you got to be sort of an outlier and you got to be a high performer. But when someone is really good and they're strong and they're performing at a high level, I don't know. Things happen for people like that. They just do. And I think, unless someone has it in for you, it's kind of hard not to climb when you're outperforming other people around you. And so I would be focusing inward on me. If I was trying to seek a leadership role, I would focus on being the best leader of myself that I can be. And in doing so, I'll be a good leader, because that's the best way to become a leader, is to focus on growing yourself. And you'll start to see that if you put in the time and the effort into developing your own leadership abilities on how you lead yourself, versus feeling like you need to go tell other people what to do, which is not leadership anyways. Leadership is influence. You influence people through your actions. And so if you're performing at a high level and you're setting the bar, you could not say a word to anyone and be the biggest and strongest leader in the entire company, because you're just setting the bar. And I had someone like this in my company. We had a commission-driven environment, and he was incredible, putting up incredible numbers. He wasn't always leading other people, but everyone looked at him like a leader. And so when people needed help, training, how do you get from A to B, they'd go to him. He just focused on growing himself, and he was like obsessed with it. And I love that about this guy. He was with me for over 10 years, and he did a great job. And he wasn't the type of leader that you would think is out front. So I would say there's different types of leadership roles, and you need to determine for yourself, what kind of a leader do you want to be? Do you want to be a leader that's influencing other people around you? Or do you want to be a high performer in a leadership role? I call these pilots versus, like a leader. A leader is going to lead other people. They're going to influence, and they're going to harmonize a group of people towards a common purpose. A pilot is going to fly and let them go, and they can lead, and they can set the bar, and they can light people up. And all you need in an environment, like all you need in any environment, is a couple of people that are lighting it up, and it becomes a contagious thing. So, depending on what kind of leadership role you're looking for, I think that's important to get clear on, am I passionate about leading other people, or do I just want to be a leader in my own capacity with my role? And once you determine that, then you can focus on what kind of leadership skills you want to build. If it's leading other people, your communication skills, your ability to have empathy, your ability to adapt is going to be extremely important. If you're a pilot, then your ability to,
seems like you just got to crush it.
But you have to be, I like to say, my coach used to tell me, you have to be hard on yourself, not down on yourself. So a lot of times my highest performers, you'd ask them, how's your month? Oh, it's good, but they're never happy. I'm at 10,000 and I'm like, okay, that's really good. You're at 8,000.
Because that's that same like voice inside that's probably motivating to them to get those big numbers, right?
Yeah. And it's a real problem for people, especially in a commission environment where you're constantly trying to like reset your numbers every month and for the year. And you just have to realize like you're playing a game in your own head. You're your own worst enemy. And I think, there's a healthy leadership mindset. And the difference between a leader, a strong leader, and someone who's not is usually a razor's edge difference. And we call them nuances. And you have to have your disciplines, your nuances. And one of them is like, you can't be down on yourself. You have to be hard on yourself. And a strong leader is going to be really hard on themselves. But then they pick themselves up, and every failure, they jump from one to the next with enthusiasm. And like, you can never tell, whenever I see someone walk around my office with a sourpuss look on their face, I'm always reminded of one of my favorite quotes is, your face is not your face. Your face is public property. Because like, you don't have to look at your face all day. We do. So you know what? Stop walking around with a sourpuss look on your face, making everyone else feel sorry for you. You're a pity party, you're a victim, and pick yourself up and start having more of an optimistic outlook. And if you're not happy where you're at, make a change. Do something, learn something, go get help. Crying about it and walking around with a frown on your face is all I'm going to do is going to make everyone else around you, miserable. So I think, you have to remember that your face is not your face. It's, you have to wear that. And I don't know, I think that's a good lesson for everybody.
Yeah. I think, I was thinking about Kobe Bryant as you were talking about leaders who are pilots. There's this, and just not being hard on yourself. There's this one interview, I might screw this up, but he was talking about, I think it was in his rookie season where I think he was in the playoffs and they weren't doing so hot. And he shot a couple of air balls in a row. And he talks about someone else on his team coming up to him and being like, hey man, like it's okay. And like really trying to comfort him. And he's like, what are you doing? Like, I'm fine. Like, and there's, and he's, the way that he looked at it, I think, was like, okay, well, what happened? I missed those shots. They were short. That means that my legs weren't as strong as they need to be. So he went into the gym that summer and just like got stronger. And so he was very hard on himself, but always, used it as an opportunity to get better and demanded it from other people too in really interesting ways. I think more so actually, I'm not entirely sure. It seemed maybe like a mix of both, listening to his interviews, a mix of leading people in the second way that you said, where you're really actively leading people. And then obviously, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. And also the hardest worker, I think, just hearing.
There's, and if you ever watch his interviews, there's a mindset.
Yeah.
Like, like whenever I have people I had someone today, I had to coach because she was really upset because she thought she let us down and she thought we weren't happy with her work. And I said to her, and I heard myself say it and I started laughing. I'm like, you will never make as many mistakes as me. Like, I just have gotten into the habit of saying, so what? I screwed up. Like, so what? If I'm learning from every single time I screw up, that's a good thing. Now, if you work in an environment where you're getting punished for screwing up, that's different. Like, I get that, but you got to be open and transparent about it and own it. And it's amazing how you can turn a screw up or a failure into a positive situation where if you're learning from it. So what I always recommend employees do is before someone has to bring something to your attention because you mess something up, do not let that happen. You take a proactive approach right away. Our number one core value is responsibility. And what I'd say is you send a note. Hey, Jacob, here's what happened. Here's how it happened. I messed up. Here's what I learned. And here's what I put in place to make sure it won't happen again. And when you can do that, I have to tell you, you can screw up many, many times in the system. And like, they have no way to respond to you except like, okay, thank you. Like you kind of catch them off guard. And I had people in my company causing lawsuits. So you can imagine you make a mistake in my company. That was a big deal. But the people who actually and people think they get fired, but Chad, I screwed up. I didn't mark the dispute right. Here's what happened. Here's how it happened. Here's what I'm going to make sure I do next time so it doesn't happen. I was high-fiving them, you know, like that's owning it. And that, you know, that made me feel good. They're learning from their mistakes because no one's perfect and you're going to screw up. But like hiding it and hoping that no one brings it to your attention, that is like the worst thing in the world for anyone to do. And it can come off cowardly, and it can come off like, I don't want you on my team, sabotage. Like, who knows what people are thinking when they find out. So I always say, as soon as you know, own it. And if you have anything to do with it, own it. And, you know, learn from it. So we use tools in Strategic Coach called Experience Transformer. You take the situation, you break it down, and then you write down all the things you learn from it. And then you share that with your team. And like we had this culture of people like sharing their failures and what they learn from it so that they can help each other, make sure that you don't repeat my mistake and I won't repeat your mistake. And that's a pretty cool thing when you can have a team that's doing stuff like that. So it's all your mindset, how you think about failure, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for this week.
Okay.
We have.
I appreciate the questions. Save the rest for next time. And thanks for those who are on. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. See ya.